Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining. My name is Matthew. Today we're going to compare Bitcoin and the dollar. Not the price, but the market cap. All right, so here we are again with the Fed balance sheet. That is the total assets that the Central Bank of the United States, the Federal Reserve, holds on its balance sheet. And if you followed the last few videos of the securities, the government securities, that is the bills, notes, and bonds that the Federal Reserve owns versus the national debt, you will note that this is a very similar looking curve. That is the vast majority of the assets, the vast majority of the assets that the Federal Reserve holds on its balance sheet are government securities. And by the way, I do hope you enjoyed the finale of that yesterday. I posted it as a YouTube short, my first. I feel like a diva now. But it was a fun look at the last 250 years of United States government debt and how much of that government debt is monetized, i.e. printed directly ex nihilo by the Federal Reserve. So, as I mentioned in my intro, we're not going to look at price of Bitcoin versus the dollar, as we typically think of it, right? The exchange rate of Bitcoins to dollars, the price. We're going to compare market caps. And when you think about the market cap of the dollar, that's kind of confusing, right? I've talked about this ad nauseum, but again, my short disclaimers to hopefully a short Friday video here. What does it mean, the market cap of the dollar, right? We have various money supplies. We have money in your bank account, money in money market funds. We have money in euro dollars. We have money in repurchase agreements. Lots of money around the world. But as I always try to make the distinction, dear viewer, dear listener, that stuff is fiduciary media. The only money in the fiat system that is completely apples to apples, analogous to Bitcoin, is base money. And where do you find base money? On the balance sheet of the monetary authority, or the balance sheet of the central bank. Now, two more disclaimers. First of all, the monetary base, it's the liability side of the balance sheet, typically will equal the total assets of the central bank. Roughly. It's not going to be exact, but roughly. Assets equal liabilities. The monetary base is a liability. They buy with this money they create ex nihilo. They buy assets. In the Federal Reserve's case, they have this huge outstanding liability also to non-banks, but it is basically central bank money to non-banks. So that's also on the liability side. So that's another reason why I'm just, for simplicity here, when I'm talking about the market cap of the dollar, who is the issuing authority of the dollar? The Federal Reserve. That is why I'm going to use the total assets for the Federal Reserve. So it counts up basically the liabilities of notes, bank reserves, and this reverse repurchase agreement facility for non-banks, which is actually a repo for the Federal Reserve. The Fed is the repo party. The non-banks, they're the reverse repo party. So once you count all those liabilities up and a little bit more, you will get total assets. Basically, the market cap of the dollar, the base money of the dollar. Of course, this is just the dollar. I've done a monetary base exhibit now for many years with the top 50 currencies in the world. This will continue to be expanded, especially with my work on the CBDC tracker with the Human Rights Foundation. We will continue to expand the monetary base there and look at actually how much CBDCs are in circulation, and how big some of these balance sheets are around the world for various central banks. But this leads me to my final disclaimer for this video. Again, this is just the Federal Reserve. This is just the dollar. Yes, the dollar is the world's reserve currency, and Bitcoin, of course, is neutral to all of these currencies. So Bitcoin, even though people like to often compare Bitcoin to many dollar-based money supplies, which I am doing right here, be very, very clear, this is just one. This is just one of many, many fiat money supplies around the world. That is base money supplies around the world. And this is the balance sheet of the central bank. So this is just the dollar. I think that's enough disclaimers now for this hopefully quick Friday video. All right, so I've shown this a long time. Let's zoom in to say roughly here, and let's look again. The Fed got almost to $9 trillion in 2021 and 2022 as the COVID scare was settling down, but they were still issuing a lot of money to both banks and non-banks and buying government securities with that issued money. You see this little blip in the last couple weeks. What was that? That was the SVB signature, most recent banking fiasco. Again, there's always many when you have a monopolistic overseer of the currency, but this is just the most recent where they thought that they needed to inject a little bit more liquidity into the nation's financial system. That's what that is. All right, so this is the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. This is the market cap of the dollar. This is the proper market cap of the dollar. It's the balance sheet of the monetary authority of the United States. All right, so how does Bitcoin compare to it? Let's just layer it on. All right, we have Bitcoin Pizza Day. Bitcoin started to get a market cap, at least according to my calculations, after Bitcoin Pizza Day. The first recognized barter transaction of Bitcoin, our friend Laszlo, and that's when I start my market cap data. So what I'm going to show you right now in orange, Bitcoin orange, is the Bitcoin market cap. Quite small here. Again, we're on linear scale, not log scale here. Just use the tooltip. Federal Reserve was going through QE1 right here, and then Bitcoin Pizza Day. So now we get some Bitcoin data. Going up to QE2. March 2012, let's just stop at this date. Mid-month, March 2012, $2.9 trillion of Federal Reserve balance sheet. How big is Bitcoin at this moment? 50 million. 0.05 billion. That's $50 million big. All right, let's move on. This is QE3. Federal Reserve tops out its balance sheet here by mid-2014. How big is Bitcoin at this point? Well, it's $6 billion. Okay, so it's growing. But how big is the Fed's balance sheet? $4.45 trillion. So $4,450 billion compared to $4.7 billion. Bitcoin is still a flea, not even compared to the global financial system, but compared to the U.S. financial system's core balance sheet. That is the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. All right, we go on here. Bitcoin had a 20K run here, late 2017. How did it look? $4.4 trillion in Fed balance sheet. About the same. Again, notice here, the U.S. was not printing money. This is the definition of printing money. So the Fed kept the balance sheet the same all the way from mid-2014 till basically the start of 2018. And then they started to take it down. All right, so they were not printing money here at all. Bitcoin was $276 billion at this point, so much, much higher. Then we get to COVID, this sort of intention to, quote, normalize the Fed's balance sheet failed. The repo spike happened here, September 2019, and then COVID, of course, March, April 2020. Just massive inflation of the balance sheet. Bitcoin also increased a lot here. There was also a lot of trading, people staying at home. Bitcoin gets over $1 trillion in market cap. And what is the Fed's balance sheet at this time? $7.7 trillion. So this is by far, you can just see with your eyes, the biggest penetration as far as a direct relationship between the value of the Bitcoin network and the value of the United States dollar, that is the Fed's balance sheet. We have a double top here in 2021, which is kind of rare, actually. Even get a little bit higher here in November 2021, $1.2 trillion. And the Fed's balance sheet is rising all the same at the same time. Gets up to $8.6 trillion at this point, late 2021. And then, of course, as I said, the Fed's balance sheet eventually gets almost to 9. It doesn't quite kiss $9 trillion. It must have been a voodoo number for them. And Bitcoin is falling here in 2022. A lot of scams start in the summer of 2022, of course, end up with the ultimate scam at the end of 2022. Bitcoin's market cap has fallen down to a low of somewhere in the 300 billion range. The Fed's balance sheet is trying to normalize as well. And then that takes us all the way till today. Let's go all the way to the very last Wednesday that's recorded by the Federal Reserve. Again, this is weekly frequency. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet is $8.6 trillion as of April 19th, and Bitcoin's market cap, $557 billion. All right. thank you for listening to me go through that step by step here. Let's just answer a couple quick questions here. Okay. 2 numbers I want you to keep in your mind. $1 trillion, all right, which was basically the Bitcoin double top value, even a little bit over in 2021. So $1 trillion, and also 500 billion, which is roughly the value today. Okay. So 500 billion and $1 trillion. Let's ask ourselves, when was the Federal Reserve's balance sheet last at those 2 numbers? All right, so let's go back in time. Before COVID, before the repo spike, before QE3, down back in time before QE2. Now we've lost the Bitcoin market cap because Bitcoin didn't exist with a real depth of monetary pricing. Let's say dollar pricing, it did exist, but no pricing here. Getting to the point where it didn't exist, start of January 2009, QE1, and we're going into 2008 right now, so Bitcoin definitely didn't exist, but that is also the financial crisis. The balance sheet is going down now, down, down, down. Just before you see the line of global financial crisis on my chart, we'll take it to September 10th, 2008. This is just before the collapse of Lehman and a lot of stuff in the markets. Fed balance sheet, $926 billion. So not too long ago, 15 years ago, the Fed's balance sheet was the size of a value that Bitcoin itself has reached, which is pretty wild to think about. I'm not making a judgment there. I'm just saying that's a wild fact. All right. Only 15 years ago, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin system, the creation of Satoshi Nakamoto, embraced by individuals, a network of people, free individuals worldwide. It was only 15 years ago where the Federal Reserve's balance sheet was under $1 trillion. Okay. Now, what was the second number to keep in mind? $500 billion. When was the Fed's balance sheet? As we see, this is a completely different monetary epoch here. When did it hit $500 billion? All right. So 2005, we're roughly at 800 billion. 2004, 700 billion. 2003, 600 billion. Getting close. 2001, 600 billion. High 500 billions. Let's go to 500 billion exactly. High 500 billion still. We're getting around the millennium. Up a little bit. 1999, we're in mid 500. 1998, somewhere here. Summer 1998. Summer 1998. Fed's balance sheet was $500 billion. To me, that does not seem that long ago. Seems quite recent. In fact, I can remember those days well, running track in high school. And yeah, it's pretty wild. So Bitcoin has been well over that value. And as of today, in 2023 dollars, Bitcoin is that value. All right. So, of course, $1998, $500 billion in 1998 is not the same as $500 billion in 2023. But nonetheless, it's kind of remarkable. You might have not even thought about it this way. The Bitcoin system today is worth, in nominal dollar terms, the same as the Fed balance sheet only 25 years ago. So Father Time, he definitely stops for no one. But when there is a good idea that comes along, probably worthwhile to pay attention. And these are just, I think, 2 very interesting numbers. You know, what was going on in 1998? I mean, Bill Clinton, president, was being impeached, lying about a woman. Again, like we haven't heard that before with presidents. Just wild to think that only 25 years ago, the entire balance sheet of the United States Monetary Authority was $500 billion. And of course, since that time, it's exploded to almost $9 trillion. Massive, massive increase. Unthinkable increase. On the eve of the financial crisis, this was those were unthinkable numbers. Yet this competing alternative monetary system has hit $1 trillion, the precise value of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet on the eve of the financial crisis, $900 billion, $1 trillion. It's hit that twice. And right now it's at $500 billion, which, again, you can't compare apples to apples, the value of the dollar at that time, but it's just remarkable nonetheless. The dollar is still the world's most demanded and coveted fiat currency. So for the world's most demanded fiat currency, even though $500 billion meant a lot, it bought a lot of different things 25 years ago. It was only 25 years ago. It's not that long ago. And now the Bitcoin system today is $500 billion. In the next video, I'm going to run through exactly how that percentage shakes out, and we're going to draw a trend line. Thanks for watching.